I am so excited that we have one of my favorite photographers, Ashley Stohl, joining us today. And, I wanted to just pull a couple pictures of Ashley's as I try to introduce her. What to say about Ashley's photographs? I think I originally discovered her work that she was doing on family. I think she was posting it a lot on Facebook is my memory of this work. And it was before it was collected as a book. And so it was something that, we all got to see evolve in real time. And, and I do think that says a lot for how projects are developed these days. A lot of times photographers are, we get to see photographers build the stuff as they're wrestling with it and building with it themselves. Ashley's photographs immediately enchanted me. And I was interested in photographers who shoot family in general, but these were special. And I felt that they seemed to be looking at things that were right in front of us all the time that never seemed photogenic to me at all. But in her way of seeing and with her kind of connection with her kids, everything seemed special and everything seemed kind of new and familiar. And her work really made me feel like I knew these kids. Now, I don't know Ashley and I don't know these kids at all, but there was some familiarity as you saw them doing different things in the photographs that you kind of felt like you were watching them grow up a little bit, for a small little kind of window. And, I remember Charles Schulz, who is the cartoonist who created the Peanuts cartoon. I remember reading a quote from him where he felt that he had this cast of characters in Peanuts that allowed him to say whatever he wanted to say. And in looking at Ashley's work, I almost felt like she had that. Like her kids in the photos, at least to me, seemed like they could represent different things at different times. And her daughter always seemed kind of like the sage one to me for whatever reason. And then her youngest one kind of seemed humorous, but exploring the world. And then, she had an older boy who kind of reminded me of my own son, Eli, and his kind of comfort or lack of comfort in front of the camera. And so there was something special about her work where it seemed as if you knew her, you knew the kids, and you kind of were all in on this together. And that grabbed me. In addition to that, the stuff just had a look where it seemed to reference like photographers like Lee Friedlander or Gary Winogrand. And it's almost like the look of the photographs felt timeless to me or from another time period. But then the subject matter and the trappings and everything looked just totally like kind of suburban California, 2019, 2020 or something like that. But so that's the little introduction I wanted to give, but I am so excited that I could use my position here at the school as an excuse to bring her in and we could celebrate her work and have her talk about it. And so I will stop sharing here. Welcome, Ashley. How are you?
Well, that was the nicest introduction.
Yeah, I meant it.
Oh, well, thanks.
Sure. So now you are not, it looks like you are not in Los Angeles, although your photographs all look very Los Angeles. Where are you?
I'm not. I'm in New Canaan, Connecticut, where it's raining. It's July and raining. I don't understand that, but apparently that's an East Coast thing.
Yeah.
And, if the rain gets loud, sorry about that. It comes and goes.
Yeah. No, it sounds good. No, it's funny. Ashley and I caught up a little bit before class, and she had a humorous anecdote about what she did today. And I'm just wondering if you'd be comfortable sharing that. One of your sons did something and needed your help.
Oh, yeah. So Charlie, my youngest, has gone to sleepaway camp for the first time. He's 12, but kids on the West Coast don't really go to sleepaway camp in the same way that they do on the East Coast. But, I've been worried about him, and 2 days into it, he broke his glasses and I went and shipped him another pair. So it's been an expensive day.
I asked you to share that anecdote because I thought it was a classic thing that parents can relate to and need to do, But, I'll stop talking here and I'll let you direct this as you'd like, Ashley.
Okay. Well, I'd love to go through my PowerPoints for a second. Let me share. And I think that will cover, so you told me that a lot of these students are not like directly out of high school or college or coming on different paths. So I'd love to talk about sort of how I came to photography and then how I came to this long-term project, which
Oh, that's excellent.
may be interesting or not interesting too.
Oh, for sure.
All right, this is the thing we discussed where now you get to see my desktop.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, one thing I would say before Ashley begins is I know many students have prepared questions, and what usually works out well is you could put the questions in the chat, and then I will try to, you know, at a pause, we can propose them to Ashley, and then at the end, we'll have a bigger live kind of, you know, Q&A type of situation here. But
yeah,
feel free.
I'm good if you want to jump in. I would love to talk afterwards and answer questions and hear about everyone's work. Yeah, jump in anytime.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Ashley.
Sure. Okay. All right. So I'm from Los Angeles. This is Santa Monica, close to where I'm from. I have 3 kids. Jake on the left, Sarah in the middle. Charlie's the little guy. There's Charlie trying to literally put himself in the suitcase because he wasn't invited on the trip. That's Jake, who I can't believe is that big, going to Sarah Lawrence in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
This is my daughter, Sarah. Everyone, based on my photography, thinks that she doesn't smile, but she does, and sometimes we do that. And that's my dog, Oscar, after an unfortunate haircut. He's not like Bubbles. So I was asked not too long ago about my photographic influences. And it's a funny question because I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a photographer, and I didn't go to art school. So looking back, wondering what my influences are, the things I can come up with are this. This is a photograph by Hugh Holland. But what's interesting to me about this is not just the like warm Southern California light and the skateboarding, is that this picture is at my elementary school. And this elementary school is around the corner from where I live right now. Like I haven't gone far in distance in life. And there's something about this era of skate photography that I really love. When I was in elementary school, we'd get out for the day and put on our roller skates and skate in this yard with the skateboarders, sort of early days of Dogtown. And this photograph feels very familiar to me. This is a place I roller skated. This is my elementary school. This is, so this vibe and this place and this style of photography feels like it's a picture of my childhood, even though I was not on a skateboard. And then my Uncle Bruce was an amateur photographer and took most of the pictures in our family photo album. This is my grandfather. And, you know, you mentioned Lee Friedlander, Gary Winogrand. I think this is entirely where my aesthetic comes from, which is like kind of snapshot photography of, let's say, the 60s. Because I used to sit, I was raised by my grandparents, and I used to sit in our den and we had all these photo albums and I would look at them forever. Like I could look at a photograph forever. And I think this kind of style really got just implanted in my brain.
Right.
That's my grandfather. Right. He was awesome. That's our backyard.
What a great photograph.
Right? So how did I end up with photography? It has to do with this picture, but I was a chemistry major in college. I did not do photography, but I had a lot of friends at Brooks. I don't know if you guys know what Brooks, which I think is no longer open anymore. But yeah, I went to UC Santa Barbara, and right next door was Brooks, and I lived downtown and have a whole bunch of friends there, and would be the subject of their homework assignments, or, you know, I have a lot of really strange pictures of myself from college somewhere in my garage. That exposed me to photography somewhat. And then you know, I got married, I had children, I was making sandwiches, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was your friend that like went on trips and took a bazillion pictures. Um, and it was hard. It's really hard to be a stay-at-home parent when you've been brought up to like education, career, what's your career going to be? And then it was my choice to stay at home. I thought that was the right thing for my family. I still stand by it, but it was destroying my brain. And then at some point after 3 children, I went to Italy, to Puglia, Italy on a, like an artist retreat with my sister-in-law. She was a writer and she used to go to this so she could focus and write. And I went with her like as a photographer, like big air quotes here. And it was my first time since I had kids that I felt like my own person. Like people called me by my name, not like, Charlie's mom or Jake's mom. And I hung out with artists and women that were older and had kind of been through this whole thing. And people that were the people that I myself would have written off and ended up being like the foremost expert in handmade paper in the world, or really specific thing. People who were making pigments out of the stone in this, ancient city in Italy. Like, it's crazy. And I got to be a part of that and walk around and take pictures, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
But I knew that I wanted to come home. Like, it got my brain fired up again. Mm-hmm. And I came home and I said to my husband, like, I need to do something. Like, I need a job, and I'm going to make photography my job when the kids are at school, when Charlie is napping. Like, I'm going to figure this out. So I don't know. I tried to. So I took workshops. I took a street photography workshop, which got me down to Venice Beach, which was a place that I went a lot growing up. And I started photographing it and realized that, having watched skateboarding my whole life, I knew how to photograph it. Like, I knew how I wanted to photograph it. I remember, like, this is one of the first shots I took down there. And I remember watching what he was doing, the trick he was working on, taking the picture, and that like, it's so elementary, but that feeling of like, he went right where I wanted him to in the frame. And it's so satisfying. And isn't that like the thing that gets you like taking more pictures and getting through the like terrible rolls where there's nothing, and taking more pictures, because then you get one where it all clicks and you get the picture you meant to take.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So I kept going down there, and it was a fun distraction. Like, I would drop off my kids at school and go down to Venice and, like, honestly, like, wait for them to wake up and get down there, and hang out. And they got to know me. I handed out prints to them. This guy is actually my nephew's, one of his closest friends, and his dad was down there when I was a kid. It's like the next generation of Dogtown.
Right.
And so, as I would sort of hang back, and then as they got to know me, they'd be like, okay, come in here, come stand right here. And they'd like make a spot for me and do a trick in front of me, because they love having their picture taken. And even more, they love getting prints.
Can I interrupt here? Who were you looking like? These look very intentional, and they look like you had studied photography. Well, were you looking at people, like, who were your influences at the time? Did you have any, or were they just naive photographs?
They were totally naive. And like, isn't that how it goes? Like, it's like beginner's luck gets you hooked. Like, you get some good pictures, and then and then it all goes to hell after a while. And then you have to like figure out how to like actually do it. But I knew what skate photography looked like. Like, I grew up hanging out with skaters and surfers. In my day, not as many girls skated and surfed. But, I would look at the magazines. I would sit with my boyfriend and pretend to be interested in skate and surf movies. I knew enough about the aesthetic that I knew things like, sorry, is the rain getting loud?
No.
I knew that things like you want to kneel down so you can show more air under their feet so they look higher. You know, the things that you do to make them look cool, I sort of figured out by looking through the camera. And then some of it was like, with this, some of it was getting the film back and going, oh, I didn't realize it looked like that. You know, like I didn't realize it was the contrasting these beautiful gray tones and the shadows, and then going back sort of intentionally and trying to see that a little more.
Right.
So
That's
yeah,
great.
thanks. That it was like, it was fun and it was such a distraction. Like I didn't think it was about me in any way, because I was like mom of 3 kids, you know, just sort of loafing around doing this. And down the road, I was paired with a poet for a project where we took 3 of our existing pictures, and the Poetry Society or something paired us with someone, and they paired me with this woman, Lynn Melnick, who I've ended up staying friends with. She's also from LA and writes gritty poetry about Los Angeles and trauma and, you know, sexual assault. Like, it's really, really challenging stuff. And I think they thought that some of this was kind of gritty and it would go with her LA thing. And they paired us up to do this project where the photograph would sort of be the seed of a poem for her. And she called me, maybe it was about this one. And she said, you know, I'm just stuck on this a little bit. Can you tell me a little more about it? And I said, well, I'm lying on the ground in Venice Beach at a place that I used to roller skate when I was a kid. That guy's the son of a guy I knew in the 70s. Like, and I realized how much of this picture was about me without being about me. And I didn't quite know what to do with that, but it was sort of an interesting pause.
Yeah.
You know, the way they say all portraits are self-portraits.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, you find out things about your pictures a long time after you take them.
Oh, for sure. And through other people's eyes, I would think.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. So I had always wanted to go to Cuba. And I didn't want to get in trouble doing it. So I went on a photo trip to Cuba. And in the meantime, I looked up, was there any skateboarding in Cuba? Because I was having fun photographing skateboarding, like with no purpose, not for a magazine or anything, just for fun. And I found out that in Havana, there's this group from Miami who are of Cuban descent, but born and raised in Miami. And there's a couple that sort of heads up this group that runs a skate park. And they get donations, they get trucks and wheels and decks and t-shirts and shoes and everything from the local community, and they bring it to Havana and meet up with the local skate community there. So I went on this photo expo and ended up meeting these people who I'd been talking to for months on email, meeting them in the airport. They were going the same day. And so I ditched the photo expedition and hung out with these guys, and it was amazing. And it was so much like kind of the vibe of Venice and the feeling of the old Dogtown days. You know, the way in the old days, we all know they would go find an empty pool and go skateboard in it. In Havana, there are tons of empty fountains. So here you've got a guy who went like to the local hotel and got a broom and swept out the fountain, and they skated in the fountain. Like, here's a fountain.
Right. Right.
You know, watch out for the rocks. So it's really kind of a scrappy old school, but like their social group and skating keeps these guys going, you know, and it was worse at the time when I went, but in a place where you don't have a lot of hope for a job, you're living on rations, but rations aren't enough. They've got each other, which was kind of the thing in Venice in the old days. Like, it's they used to call it the ghetto by the sea. Like it is oceanfront property that had a really bad gang problem when I was a kid, a lot of real poverty, and kids stuck together. Like skateboarding kept kids going. And I saw that same kind of vibe here. You know, and like this guy like grabbed onto a cab to get a ride, and I'm chasing after him to take the picture, and I'm thinking like, I was driving carpool 2 days ago. It was such a fun, and then also like all these kids became my kids. Like you can't, I'm old enough, I'm older than them enough that like I can't pretend I'm one of them. I'm not gonna try. But it's also so fun to go get your head out of your life for a minute.
Right. Right.
And you watch them grow up. Like I've stayed Facebook friends with a lot of these kids, and they're adults now. And I was talking about kind of seeing my part in the picture with the skate picture from Venice. And it's interesting forming relationships with these guys and getting to know them and seeing where they're interacting with me more in the photographs. Sort of became the beginning of what the family work was. Like we're kind of doing it together. These aren't candid moments. They know I'm there. You know, I'm not being invisible. But I almost love them more. The ones where we're having some kind of interaction. Because I am a foreigner standing there. Like I'm not going to try and pretend like I'm not.
Right. Right.
So then the problem is when you like to travel and take pictures, the problem is you come home and then like, what do? Like you go to the market. This is my local market. You can only kind of mess around with your pictures in Lightroom so much. You can reorganize them. You can make different groups. You can mess around with them. But if you're traveling and photographing, you know, that there's times when you're not and you want to be taking pictures. And I didn't quite know what to do with that until someone, my husband, said this to me in not a nice way. Don't say this to anyone, please. Anyone who's listening, don't ever say this to anyone. And I got really pissed off. And I thought, I'm going to document this with my camera. I'm going to figure out how. And that was my mad face. That's actually my dog. So Stephen Shore did this project where he photographed a friend, I don't know, what was it, every half hour for 24 hours. And they're just kind of factual. This is what he's doing. Like put the guy in the frame. Here's what he's doing. Half hour, click, half hour, click. And I thought, all right, I'm going to do that. Like these pictures are such, like I was so angry when I was taking them. It's like there's no art to it. It's like, fine. You want to know what I'm doing? I'm doing dishes. Like we had something green for dinner. I'm sitting here at breakfast. I'm driving. I'm taking out the trash. Like I'm sitting at lunch with Brooke. And it turns out photographing every half hour is a lot. I tried to do it like every 15 minutes. So this is kind of the evolution of how I got to where I went.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And what was interesting was that some of them are photographs I like a lot, and some of them are just kind of like whatever. And I think I was starting to want them to be good photographs, meaning like composed well. Like I really am a single image person, meaning that I like to look at any one picture and see the composition, see the exposure, see that there's something interesting, that there's some interesting story. People are different. Some people like what I call filler. That sounds judgmental. It kind of is. But photographs that I look at and like, I don't really know what this is. It doesn't stand on its own. I like photographs that stand on their own. So like in this group, I like the one with his little hands and all the bacon on the thing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
like the one of the gate. Like I kind of like them as a group, but like the trash can, like that's not a, I don't know, is that a photograph? That's not my kind of photograph. So then it's like, okay, let me stop trying to photograph like Stephen Shore. And part of it was the process of like forcing myself to actually see something to photograph every half hour. And I started taking what I thought of as real pictures. It's everything, every picture is a real picture, but sort of more thoughtful pictures as I went along my day. So if you have kids, you know, there's a lot of just hanging out at the park. And this photograph was kind of the beginning for me of like, okay, this can document what I'm doing in the day and it can be a thoughtful photograph. Having birthday parties.
Oh, that's great.
Hot tip, have a birthday party for 4 kids because that's 4 moms splitting the work. For parents, I should say. Splitting the work. It was moms, by the way. And, you know, kids doing the weird stuff that they do. And the pictures to me became a little less angry and more sort of photographs that represented me as a photographer and my exploration of like, let's say street photography here. You know, this is like a photograph you could take of strangers. These happen to be my kids.
Absolutely.
Oh,
wow.
These guys, if anyone watches that show, what's it called? Baskets? The weird clown show with Zach Galifianakis. They're on it. They jog in my neighborhood all the time. I like to walk on the beach with my friend Deirdre and see the natural sights.
That's beautiful.
And then I was talking to, this is my friend David Carroll, also a photographer. And I was talking to him about how I'd like to make a book. I have a theory that photographers are like gallery-based or book-based. And that's like, it's just how your brain works. Because I have a design background, I tend to think in books. And I said to him, he has a lot of experience. He's been a photographer forever. And I said, oh, I want to make a photography book of my work, blah, blah, blah. But I was wanting to make like my grand statement about photography. And he was like, you're not ready for that, which at the time I thought was insulting. But he said, you are doing this one small thing that's a perfect way to put yourself out there in a book. That's kind of like a small, humble project. And this is in line with what a writer told me once, which is no one sits down to write the great American novel. You just sit down to write. And if what you write ends up being the great American novel, that's great. But you have to sit down and write. You can't write and try and feel some weight or importance. And I'm so glad that I got this advice from him, because we started, the thing he was talking about was a thing that I sort of thought of as a joke, Darth Vader. So my son Charlie was obsessed with Darth Vader. He came out in this outfit and said, this is a Darth Vader costume. And I happened to be messing around with a 4x5 at the time. And this is maybe the one and only picture I've taken with it. And it's fuzzy. You can see I have the back on upside down. But we started finding him in odd places, doing odd things with his Darth Vader mask on. Charlie is visually impaired, and he has this super funny sort of manner. And I would take these pictures. We started this blog called Darth Vader. So like his grandparents and his aunt and uncle and stuff could see the funny stuff he was doing. And we would post them. And I don't know. So David said, you're doing this. This could be a perfect little book, a perfect first thing, your debut, and kind of a humble, small book. You know, this kind of a thing you don't need 100 pictures of.
Right.
So I started taking more of these and fewer like quickie iPhone snapshots and more like, you know, well thought out photographs with my camera. And we took this helmet everywhere we went. He started getting real over it. And it was fun. And it was, you know, a great way to, I don't know, I felt like I was putting too much weight on my first book idea, wanting to write the great American novel. And this was just a fun thing that I knew how to do, put it together with one thing. Sorry, 1 second. Can you shut the door? You know, people always ask me if these were staged or not. I tried to. Like, I would find a location, and Charlie would never do what I asked him to do, but his ideas were always better. So we went in the market, and I had this whole idea that it was going to be like down the aisle, like cart in the middle, him sitting under the cart like we all used to as kids, like straight down the aisle. And he was like, no, I want a picture with Jake's legs. Like, why? Why? And we ended up getting a picture with Jake's legs. Like, there you go. I don't know. He's a better art director than I am. Kids can think of weirder things.
Absolutely. You know, just to interrupt here, yeah. What was the fantasy book you were thinking of that you got talked down from? Like, what would that have? I was
thinking general, here's my photography. But I don't think I had been a photographer long enough to even really know what my photography was, and I had never making a book. So I didn't realize how many pictures you need to start with to whittle it down. Mm-hmm. It was too early.
Right.
So right. I now say to everyone, like, let the museums make that book when you're dead. Like, don't worry about that book. And just do things that make sense as a book. This makes sense as a book to me. Right. You know, it's like one sort of honed topic. The book was physically small, like Charlie, like the whole thing made sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people feel like they might only have one book in their career. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so much pressure. You know, if you're a filmmaker, you're going to make one movie. If you're a writer, you're going to write one book. Like, oh, that's too much pressure. Like, you know, like they said, just write. Like, this is me just writing. Like, this is one cohesive project made into what is hopefully a smart little book. So I didn't want to hand it off to just anyone. I felt like I knew exactly what that book was. Mm-hmm. So David Carroll and I decided to publish it together, and we made up a company because it sounded like a name. We called it Peanut Press. This is our logo. Get it? Peanut Press.
Yeah.
And we started designing the book, which is super fun. Here are some ideas for the foil stamping in the cover. Right. And the editing. The editing process was interesting. We whittled it down to maybe like 20 something images, and I knew I needed a bunch more. Around that time, I was invited to another publisher's sort of roundtable. So these were all photographers that I really admired as photographers, and they sat around the table. Do you remember the book We All We Got?
I don't know that one. What was that?
It's like he's a photojournalist, but it's about gang violence in Southside Chicago. It's intense. But they were sort of workshopping that book. So they had a book dummy and they were passing it around the table. And I'm sitting with like Donna Ferrato and Ken Schless and Jason Ashkenazi. And they're asking me my opinion. Like, it was very democratic. And being somewhat new to photography at the time, I had to sort of talk myself through like, okay, speak up. Your opinion is valid. Like, don't diminish your work. I remember David said, well, we're working on Ashley's book. And Ken looked at me and said, what's your book about? And I was like, and he goes, oh, someone needs to work on their elevator speech. because I didn't want to say it's my kid in a Darth Vader helmet, which is what it is, but not what it's about.
Yes.
And that took me a while to be able to do. But it was interesting after that day, going back to look at my edit and again, being a single image person, thinking, would I hold up any one of those images and show them to the people that I just sat at the table with and say, this represents me as a photographer? Mm-hmm. And that was sort of the moment that solidified. And I said, I'm not going to show an image or put an image in a book or anywhere out there that I wouldn't want to hold up on its own and say, this represents me as a photographer. And right. that led me to take out a couple of the, like, we graded all the photographs, A, B, C, some of the B-level photographs, and spend longer shooting and finishing the book, just so it would be the best thing it could be. You know, this book was 28 pictures, and I feel like that's a good length for this topic.
Oh, yeah.
If you hit 50 or something with this kind of thing, then it's like shtick. You're doing an
ad. Yeah.
But so I wanted each of those to be home runs. And it took a while for me to finish. And the book came out and got some press. This is our party. We had an actual stormtrooper at the party.
Oh, that's awesome.
Charlie basically learned to write his name by signing books. And the book kind of went viral in a little way. Like, it sold out in 2 weeks, and it was absolutely crazy. You know, it's interesting when you're watching the sales come through. You're seeing like your friends and your aunts and uncles and your, I don't know, people you know, other photographers you know, and then you start seeing like randos from Switzerland. And it's like, why? Yeah. And it was, even though this to me was about the struggles of my visually impaired son, mm-hmm. I think there was some amount of struggle as a child that people related to. Like, a lot of people said that they related to the book. You know, being little and mad and you have no control of anything and you're powerless and you're mad about it. And that was totally unexpected to me, that there was something relatable in this. Like, it was so, in my head, it was so specific. So that was really wonderful to hear. I don't know, I loved it. So I kept shooting, and I kept photographing my family. We retired the Darth Vader helmet, but photographing, you know, all my kids, the whole family, and trying to not edit in the camera, meaning trying not to say like, okay, I'm photographing, what do you do all day? Or I'm photographing this, and just take pictures all the time, edit later. Right. And so I ended up with all these pictures of my family, and around the time my daughter went to college, so that was the end of all 3 kids at home. I thought, okay, it's time to make a book. It had been a couple years since Darth Vader. It was time to make a book out of this. And I was sitting with my friend Lynn, the poet that I'd worked with before. And I was showing her these pictures, and I was like, we were trying to come up with a title for the book. And I said, you know, I feel like it originally started as, what do you do all day? And she said, but that's not what you ended up shooting. What you ended up shooting was more like, the days are long, the years are short. And that stuck with me, that phrase, and it kept, like, it stuck in my head. And it, like, I totally didn't, some photographers are really intentional about what they're doing in their project. And I had just sort of been taking photographs. I started at one place, but I ended up another, and I was fighting it. And it all came down to the title of the book. But she said, the days are long, the years are short. It's about the passage of time. It's about the kids growing. It's about my daughter leaving and us all being together. And I I couldn't quite figure it out. This is my design background until I sat down and did sort of the treatment of the title. And because you can't have a title that's like the days are long, the years are short. That's exhausting. So it became Days and Years. And I had a show in New York at Leica.
Hey, before we move from there, the one thing I remember, because you did a lot of the wrestling of your project, on social media, and I remember there was an alternate title that you had mentioned that one of your kids brought up. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was, I'm not upset, I'm just disappointed.
I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. That was the runner-up title that actually was, I think, the best potential title.
Yeah, I liked that a lot because I thought it was like a kid's view of a parent or something like that. You know what I mean?
This is a parent's view of their kids. But I thought it was it made it sound so negative. Like, here are my kids, I'm disappointed in them. I see. It's amazing the way people can perceive your work and perceive what you're saying with your work. So yeah, I had this show. There's my daughter in the middle who wanted to come to the opening.
Wow.
That's where everyone walked up to her and said, you do smile. Like,
how big was the show? Like how many images make up the book versus how many make up the show?
I think they're similar. There might be like 35 in the show and maybe there were 40 in the book. They were made to complement each other. Like the book was supposed to be out for the show. It didn't end up being, but that's fine. But it's a lot of the same work, especially in Manhattan, you're limited by space. So we managed to get a lot of work in there, which I was really happy about. Like, I feel like the show told the whole story.
Right.
So this is the book that I ended up making of that work. And I'm really happy with it. This is just some of the zoom in on the book.
So if you were to describe these pictures, are they funny? Are they melancholy? Are they because I kind of feel like whenever I try to settle on one word to describe them, then there's another one that kind of comes up,
I feel like they're funny and melancholy, but I think that's kind of how kids are. Like, kids are funny and they're moody and they're, like Charlie, I'm going to admit, kind of didn't want to be doing this, but I bribed him with some Halloween decoration that he wanted, this like old fashioned looking phone that you pick up and it goes, whoa.
Yeah.
It's still in our front hallway. And then he agreed to put it on, but he was like kind of mad about it. But like, that is both funny and sad to me. Like, it's all the things. And I think my kids are really funny. And I'm sad they're growing up and moving out. And, I think it's all of it. There's a lot of people talk about childhood in photography. People talk about childhood and about parenthood with kind of rose-colored glasses on.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing I always reference is fireflies in a jar. And David Carroll once said to me, like, why are you mad at Keith Carter? And I was like, I'm not mad at Keith Carter, but I'm just saying that the pictures of the kids with the fireflies in the jar, like, that's wonderful and idyllic. And so little of childhood and parenting is like that. More of it is being in Target and like negotiating with your mom about a thing, and my goal has always been to get people talking honestly, like more honestly about their lives and what's hard. I think for a long time, mostly with motherhood. I mean, that's because that's what I have experience in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of painting a rosy picture. And I think we'd all feel better if we talked about what's hard about motherhood, because there's a lot that's hard.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So the part of me that was angry photographing the trash can because I took out the trash, is the same part of me that's getting the sort of melancholy and the exhaustion and the sadness and all that. Like I want to say that because that's part of my life and that's part of my kids' life. Kids get frustrated. Kids go to Target and don't always get what they want, you know?
Oh yeah.
And
It's beautiful.
thank you. And then there's like that stuff you want to capture.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, that's actually not in the book because I can't, like, at some point we had to stop putting new pictures in the book.
Yeah.
So this was probably taken around the time we were making the book. And at some point you just have to stop. I don't know, family vacation.
Right.
We went to Japan.
Right.
So it was great continuing to photograph it. I've slowed down a bit. Obviously with quarantine, I had captive subjects. And just photographed whatever we were doing. It's interesting looking back. I think during a lot of quarantine, we were just bored.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pool pictures, you know, like we're just sitting there for as long as we can to like, what are we going to do with the day?
Yeah.
So,
you know, as we look at, that one's really beautiful. As we look at your work and we're talking about, you know, other people who have photographed family, be they men or women, I'm wondering, like, are there photographers who you look at, you know, you talked about Keith Carter's view of childhood as being too romantic, maybe for you. Were there people doing family that you thought, oh no, they capture what I'm looking for? You know, was there anyone that you felt, oh yeah, they're kind of doing...
Actually, Lee Friedlander, so like that's right in my 60s snapshot vibe.
Yeah.
Put out a book. You know, he puts out like a book a week. And he has a book called Family in the Picture that is his photographs of his family. And I got that book and I sat down and read it like a novel. Like it's chronological and you see like, oh, he's so in love with his wife. Oh, she's getting old. They have a kid now. They have another kid. Like, oh, the daughter-in-law died of cancer. Oh, this is terrible. Like it's this emotional roller coaster. And it was so personal. And I put it down and I said to David, like right after that, if my entire photographic life comes up with just the equivalent of that book, I'll be happy. You know, he's Lee Friedlander, so he can do 1,000 books that interesting.
Yeah.
But to me, if I can do something like that one book, I'll be thrilled.
Right.
People, because I'm a woman, people like to talk about Sally Mann to me. Sally Mann is not my jam. That's my personal opinion. I've been like yelled at by women. This is not a joke. Because I'm not into Sally Mann. I think her photography is a little romantic for me. It's just not my style. Like it's not what grabs me. Yeah. And I think you and I have had this conversation. I think she's super smart. And I think she doesn't like to admit that her photographs are about her children's sexuality. And I don't necessarily even think that's a bad thing to talk about. I think it's disingenuous that she won't admit it. It's not my thing. Yeah. It's not my vibe. Sorry. Yeah. You don't have to like every photographer that is in some same genre as you.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think.
Sorry, I get defensive about it because women yell at me about it on Facebook.
Well, I think it is interesting that she has so much defined that territory that I would think it's hard to get out of a conversation of your work without someone bringing it up to some tangent or something like that.
Yeah, well, there's some valid topics like photographing your kids. Like, can they give you permission at that age? You're exposing some of their life. And I've always tried to be respectful of times that I think of it as on or off duty. But like there are times they need me to be their mom. There's a reason you don't see my kids sick or crying in here. Like because I'm not a photojournalist. Like I decide when I put the camera down.
Yeah.
Although one time my son was middle of the night, he had like a horrific bloody nose. So little guy sitting naked on the toilet looked like a crime scene. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I said, Charlie, I'm only going to ask you once and you get to decide, can I take a picture? And he was like, no. So that's the picture I never took.
Right. Right. Now, a question, it's funny. So I asked the students to all, like, part of one of their assignments in preparing for your visit was to research other photographers who, are doing family. And, and I did that myself. And the first person that I saw who I thought was representing raising kids in the same way I viewed it was a photographer, Tierney Guerin. Are you familiar with her work?
Uh-huh.
And it was the first time that I thought I saw someone acknowledge the anxiety and the stress of raising kids. And it had that franticness that I had and that feeling of like, I can't take one more minute of this type of feeling. And I thought her photos carried that. Yeah. And, and so I was wondering if you had any views on just her work as a random person I'm throwing at you,
I don't know. I know her work. I don't know it well enough to like have a big comment on it, but I think that's something, I mean, everything is just your preference and how you are as a person. I'm not a huge secret keeper. I'm not like, if there's an elephant in the room, I'll describe it. Like, I like to say the thing. I'm not a like, let's cover it up and make it pretty. So that is kind of the stuff I'm drawn to, things that are a little more honest in their emotion and feeling, and things that are personal and intimate. I think I just get sucked in by any kind of intimacy, and that can be in a landscape or a photograph of your children or a photograph of your partner or anything. Right.
No, that's well stated. These new ones, so this is quarantine that we're looking at right here, the quarantine haircut.
So it's like quarantine haircuts. My daughter got really good at it. She also got really good at doing my roots, and now that she's back at college, that's a problem.
There's something about the way you see light and the way you put together pictures that does seem timeless, though. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Like, let's go back one shot. Let's go back to the haircut shot. There's nothing in that really says 2020, except for the obvious, except for the idea that we were all.
That is my weird kind of nostalgia, and I think the era of photography that I like, which is 60s sort of snapshot black and white. If there's a little fill flash in it, I like it even more. But I think what I'm attracted to in my pictures is not really like a statement on now. Like, I don't know, if my kid's looking at their phone, they're looking at their phone, but those are never the pictures that I think of as super interesting. I don't know. I think I'm super nostalgic as a person. Like, I live on a street named after my grandmother, like literally.
Right.
I live walking distance from the house I grew up in, around the corner from my elementary school. Like, everything is nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
And it's funny, my kids, Charlie, the one getting his haircut here, is really like that. Like, he was 10 years old when our local coffee shop closed and he cried. Like, I think you're just born like that, kind of sentimental and nostalgic about things. So I think, and I'm saying this now, like, I'm not thinking when I'm taking a picture.
Right.
But I think I'm interested in things that I'm not here to talk about now. I'm here to talk about like the feeling, like of, he's sitting there tolerating the haircut, and like, why are we even cutting our own hair? Oh, because it's a pandemic. Like, that's a weird, interesting thing.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Then I would also kind of throw this out to you is oftentimes, like, I had a friend once who photographed family who did say to me, once you photograph family, you're never going to be able to get that type of access, intimacy, emotional payoff from any other subject that you get from photographing family, you know? And
think
I
that's
wonder if you have
true.
thoughts on that.
I think that's totally true. I've slowed down. I'm in this weird transition point where I've slowed down on this. Like, this isn't my main focus.
Right.
Sarah's been at college. Jake is about to leave for college. Like, it'll just be Charlie and I staring at each other. And that, like, while he's a great subject, he's also in middle school, which is an era where you really don't want your picture taken a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm figuring out what I'm doing. Like, am I photographing my friends and my other close relationships? And with my peers, with women my age, it's very hard to get candid. It's very hard to get relaxed in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I've been photographing Los Angeles and like the places that were important to me. The way I grew up, I think I have some of that work here. I can just, oh, these are more, and you know, if you get, I put this in here because these are some Polaroids I took during the quarantine, just trying to mix it up. Like,
Yeah.
you can take the same pictures and sometimes you get a little stale feeling. And so you have to do, and this is a lot more like the, what do you do all day? Like those every half hour pictures. I wasn't literally doing that, but it was just kind of like, okay, upper right-hand corner. Yes, we washed our fruit a lot. Yes, I did a lot of dishes. We went in the pool. The dog dragged something, you know, just like these were the mundane things of quarantine. So I've been going out photographing Los Angeles with maybe that same, I hope, timelessness that you mentioned, because to me, I'm looking for the Los Angeles that I grew up with. So I hate it when I see a place that used to be something I loved and is now something else. And, you know, this is the beach I grew up going to. Like, this is basically what it looked like. I actually was really feeling kind of stale about this and having trouble going out photographing without people. And I was talking to David Carroll about it, who said, I bet you can't take 24 different photographs of palm trees in one weekend, which he knows that I cannot back down from a dare.
Right.
And I did, for the record, and got some pictures I'm really happy with, just randomly driving around town, which is not my normal practice.
Right.
So I really go back and forth between kind of being super intentional working on a project, and then I have to like loosen up and just get myself to photograph anything, and then I get too focused on that, and then I have to, like, you know, the pendulum swings back and forth.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes you need these little things like, okay, I'm going to take all Polaroids this weekend, or I'm going to go out and give myself the challenge of 24 palm trees.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to say about exercises. You know what I mean? Like I'm a big believer in, like, sometimes there are big projects that take over your life and you're lucky if you have that. Yeah. But there's other times when I think a simple exercise can lead to help you figure out what you're really interested in next.
It can get you unstuck because sometimes you're looking too hard for something.
Oh yeah.
With Darth Vader, I wasn't thinking about it at all. And the first, let's say, 24 pictures came so easily. And then when I was like, okay, I need like 7 more or something, those took as long as the first 24.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes you just got to get out of your zone and, you know, do something different, or have a goal, or have a dare.
Oh yeah. No, for sure.
I have, since this is a class, I always end with unsolicited advice.
Oh, love that. Love that.
Find someone whose judgment you respect and who understands and sees your work. You need a sounding, I believe it's helpful to have a sounding board. I think it's really hard sometimes to see the things you do because you're so far deep in the photographs. And it's not, for me, it's been incredibly helpful to have that relationship with David Carroll, and for him to say, for me to go, well, I'm bored, I'm not taking pictures, and he'll go, I bet you can't do 24 palm trees this weekend, and I'll go out.
Right.
Or
right.
him pointing out like, oh, you take pictures of threes. And then I was like, really? And I look in my photographs, yep, there's 3 garbage cans, there's 3 signs, there's 3 children. Like,
yeah.
You know, it's, if it's someone you respect and who really sees your work, it can be a huge gift. And then again, if you feel, and sometimes I feel stale photographing the same picture, but if you feel like you got the picture, you got a good one, take it again anyway. And I am the queen of like, no, but I already got a picture of the 3 of them. But if you don't keep doing it over time, like to me, these are all the same picture. And then you keep doing it, and you see the passage of time. Like I say to myself, like, I've taken the picture of the 3 of them standing there. I'm so bored with myself. How can I do this?
Yeah.
I force myself to keep doing it, and I'm happy that I do.
Oh yeah.
And then this is just shamelessly my way of saying, look, I got to take a picture with Robert Frank. But I do think having a photographic community is really important. It's how I know you from Facebook. Like it's how, I mean, I think you were one of the first men that were my contemporaries. Like, let's not forget that Robert Frank took pictures of his kids. But, you know, my contemporaries that take pictures of your children. And that's really nice to see. And it's nice to have the, you know, feedback and reinforcement, and no other photographers love to talk about photography. So there you go. There's a whole bunch of amazing people in this picture.
Oh, definitely.
So that's it. That's my talk.
That was wonderful, Ashley. Hey, thank you so much. You know, I have more questions, but I know our students all have questions that they had come up with and everything.
You want me to stop there, or do you want me to leave it here?
Oh, let's see. Why don't we stop sharing so we can all see each other's faces? Oh yeah, big class here. And so why don't we open it up to the students where we don't have to put them in the chat. We can actually just kind of talk here and share some of your questions. I'm just seeing what's going on in the chat here. Yeah. Oh, someone put a question here. Ofer, rather than put it here, why don't you bring it up in class, or bring it up right now?
Sure, I have, because you're giving me the first, I'm gonna have a couple of things. First of all, just a comment. I think your work is what I would consider the anti-Instagram, which I love it. Well, I mean, all you see usually is pictures of something looking great, and being able to see real life, I would call it the anti-Instagram. And then by the way, on the title, before I go to my questions, I love days are long, years are short. I'm a parent too. And so, you know, I've been there both off to college, and I've been there, and the days were very, very long sometimes. And the years just flew by like they're not here. So I would have gone with that. Anyway, you know, just I'll start with the end. Cliche question, why black and white?
I get distracted by color.
Okay.
So to me, a lot of color photography is about the color, like the way I perceive it. To me, black and white is, for one thing, it's the vibe I grew up with. It's like what I was raised on, and it lets me show more feeling, and it's less literal. Like, yes, that thing was red, but like, does it matter? Like, if it's red,
well,
then
I mean, some styles,
so it works. It's the thing that works for me and lets me get the kind of feeling across.
Well, you had me at hello, and it's a distraction for what you, you know, trying to do, and also like the vibe you grew up with. A couple more real fast. One, not on my list here. I noticed that a lot of the photos that you do are not on your website. Some of them are.
I don't know. a single photographer that's really great about updating their website.
Okay, so I didn't know if there was a strategy, or because I mean, you shared with us some photos today that honestly would have given me different perspective when we were asked to research you. So I feel like your website is not doing you justice to how great of a photographer you are, because I didn't get the same impression. Now you're all of a sudden sharing all these beautiful photos, and I'm like, wait. This is. I wish I had that when I researched you. So
for a lot of contemporary photographers, it's helpful to look at their Instagram, and that's where I put a lot of this, or Facebook. Although during the Trump administration, I stopped accepting Facebook friend requests. But I think on I put a lot of stuff on Instagram, and I had that tied in with my website, and then it wasn't working, and I took it off.
Okay, well, my recommendation is update your website, because I hate photos on Instagram, and so I'm definitely going to seek more of your photos. I'll take a look, and then for the final question, I'll ask it. It's a very complicated one, so focus. You're in your about. You're like saying that you basically are a mom that use photography to escape the family, thing, and yet your photography is all about the family. So not only you didn't escape it, you got drowned into that. So that's the, is it truly an escape, or was it just a way to look at the family from another perspective? And the second part of that question, which is inherent, you also said kids are off to college. Then what comes next?
Okay. I got you. Like many photographers, I hate writing my bio and any sort of project statement. So that's there. And a lot of times when I do a talk, someone will pull up like whatever I have on my website and read it. And I'm like, oh God, what did I write? Like, so yeah, that's kind of true. I cobbled together some stuff that felt sort of like words, but I don't know. I'm figuring all of this out as I go. And for me, that keeps it evolving. I did start, which I think I said tonight, I did start as I started thinking it was an escape, and I ended up sort of diving deeper into my family. It's possible I could write that more clearly in my bio. And like I said, now that my kids are going to college, it's feeling different. And also there's something about making a book about a particular project that for me sort of puts it to bed in a nice way. Like it was a relief to not be going on every family vacation with that Darth Vader helmet. But so I'm still taking pictures of my family, but it feels different. It feels less urgent. It feels like a different phase. And I'm driving around Los Angeles. And so if you go by the every portrait is a self-portrait, my first book was how I feel about having a visually impaired son and about Charlie. My book about my family was about how I feel about my children. And I think my next thing might end up being about the city where I've grown up, which is Los Angeles, which I've seen change quite a bit in these years, which I'm constantly trying to get away from and cannot be dragged away. But I'm not sure where that's going, and I'm having fun and sometimes getting stuck, like just shooting.
Well, it sounds like you're expanding.
Yeah.
You're going from the family cell to the city now. So yeah.
Yeah, but it's my city. I'm photographing my city in particular. This is by no means like an exhaustive study of Los Angeles. This is what I would show you if we walked around and I said, that's where so-and-so used to live. This used to be my coffee shop. Now it's a bank. Like it's a very personal view of my city. And the question is, can I make like kind of urban landscapes feel personal and as intimate as my family work? I don't know. I'll figure it out. And then I also want to photograph my friends who I miss terribly during the quarantine. And, I have such a great network of friends. And I think for a lot of people, it really highlighted how important our in-person network is. And if I can figure out a way to photograph them, I will, so the answer is, I don't know, but we'll see. I'll have fun figuring it out.
Thank you.
Very good. Shane, you have a question?
Yes. First of all, like, great presentation. I really enjoyed it. And you honestly answered just about every single question that I had thought of. But one thing is, do you see any of your children following in your photographic footsteps?
No.
No, none are interested.
None are interested. Nope. My daughter wants to be an archaeologist. Jake, I think, will be a sci-fi writer or make video games. Charlie's a blank slate. I don't know, but I don't think he's going to be a photographer.
Wow, okay.
I don't think I birthed an artist, but they're all creative in their own way.
That was a good answer. Hey, Eddie has a question here. Eddie, you want to just speak it out?
I was noticing that many of the images are shot from a wider perspective, lots of wide angles, maybe 50, 24, 17, roughly. There's not really a lot of like real up close zooms, you really include the environment, and that's it. The majority of the images, if not all the images that I saw. Is there a specific reason for that?
Well, I use mostly a 24. I shoot with Leicas, and a lot of this was on an M6 or an M5. I also somewhere in there started shooting with a Leica Q, which is a fixed 28. I wish it was a 24, but everyone finds their focal length that works for them. And for me, the 24, like I always say, I'm shooting right across the table. So we're having dinner. I like this much area around the person across from me. With a 28, I have to like lean my chair back a little bit. But I think in that weird nostalgic, my worship of Lee Friedlander, like I like seeing what's going on around us. To me, just a face and lighting is not enough story to me. I've seen beautiful pictures like that, and in the history of photography, there have been beautiful pictures taken like that of important people, and they can convey a lot of emotion. But for me, I like some context. Everyone has their angle that they like. That's where I am. 24. It's right here.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you.
That was an excellent answer. Anna Rose.
Ashley, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic presentation, and I can relate to you. I also have 3 children, so can related to much of what you said, and love your work. I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate a little bit more on I believe it's called the Peanut Publications, or the printing that you Peanut Press. Yes, if you could elaborate on why you started that, and what about, like, do you use certain kinds of papers, or how, like, what kinds of books are you wanting to produce, or just talk a little bit about that.
So there is a long history in photography of photographers self-publishing under a name. So Lee Friedlander publishes under Haywire Press, but Haywire Press is just him. So David and I were going to publish this book. I didn't want to hand it off to a publisher. There are publishers that will ask you for 45 grand and give you no books. There are publishers that will take complete creative control. And I have a graphic design background. And I felt like I really knew what this book should be, like what it should look like, what it should feel like. And I didn't want to relinquish any control. Now, David had the experience of, he has published a couple of his own books. So we were like, let's make it sound official and make a name. Let's make t-shirts. Like we did we got the website and the t-shirts before we had actually done any work. And so it's basically self-publishing from that book. And then making that book, we went to Meridian Printing, which is one of the best printers of photo books in the world. You can go to a lot of printers, they don't all know how to print photography or understand that photographers really care about how their images are printed. And so working with them on my book, like we just had so much fun making this book, and it turned out so well to the point where I'd hand some of my book and they would compliment the printing. And at first I was like, okay, like say something nice about the pictures. But looking at photo books since then, I've realized how important that is to me and how much I benefited by their experience in printing photographs. It's just, the pictures turned out to me beautifully and the way I wanted them. And then the book went kind of viral, and that was crazy. So then all my friends are calling me going, how'd you do that? I want to make a book. Like, so we're like, okay, let's help friends make books and have the same good experience. The thing I loved about Meridian was also that they've printed so many books that we all have on our shelves that I could take a book from my shelf, realize they printed it, and say like, all right, what paper did you use in this? And they'd have a sample to me in 2 days. So being able to dissect really specifically what I wanted in my book, what I wanted it to feel like, the weight of the paper, how I wanted them to turn. These are all things that it was easy to work with Meridian on. And we have worked with them on every single book since. So it went from my first book with no real plan. And then we made books with Rami Narula and Richard Bram, who are both street photographers, very different work. And we helped them put out their first books. We love doing a first book and helping someone really have a great experience with their first book and come up with the book that they want. And we, there's 2 of us in the company and we just print what we like. Like there's kind of no real narrow genre to it, but we, if you go to the Peanut Press website, peanutpressbooks.com, you'll see what we like and what we've printed. In the last year, we printed a new thing, which is called Peanut Portfolios, which are small books, like take one project from a photographer, small books that come with a print. And I think it's a nice way for someone to put a project out there that maybe has never been published. It's a nice way to collect photography at an affordable level. Like, we published Lori Nix and Kathleen Gerber, who are amazing. Their work sells for like 10 grand a print. So this is a way to have a print of theirs for $150 that comes with a little book. And those have been really fun because honestly, it's really fun to only have to sell like 100 books of one person. And we were able to help so many people who had never had a book, get their first book out. So I don't know, we're just, the answer is we just kind of do what we want. And it's fun.
Thank you.
That was good. That was a good question. David Corey, you're working on a project about family. I was wondering if you had any particular questions.
Tell me.
Thanks. Yeah, I was gonna ask. I know a lot of this stuff. I photograph my kids all the time. It's really like sometimes when my best work comes out. And like I get what you mean. Maybe with one of your statement that Oprah was talking about, like maybe you could take a break from family. But when I'm shooting my kids, it's almost like I could step out of being a parent, and like I could just photograph them, and they mostly enjoy it, They're 10.
Sometimes it helps me be more present.
Right.
Like you're sitting at the park where kids are playing, like I'm just sitting there, my brain's falling asleep. But if I'm taking pictures of them, I'm more engaged in what they're doing. I'm more there with them. So I don't know, some people say the camera's like a barrier, but in some ways it lets me be more present and focused on what's going on.
Right. Do you often do you kind of like direct maybe an activity a little bit to set up, an image or any ideas?
Totally.
Like
I'm not a photojournalist. Like they have rules. Like I will move a lamp. I will move a distracting, like if my black purse is in the corner making a big blob of darkness in the corner, like right. I'll move that. Like We have restaged pictures. Sorry, it's really hot here. I'm gonna tie my hair up. We have totally restaged pictures. One time Charlie didn't want to take a bath and he hid behind the clear shower curtain, which was hilarious. So we restaged that as a Darth Vader. Sometimes I'll keep an eye out for locations. So especially with Darth Vader, I had sort of this idea of what was a Darth Vader type location, and I would take him to a place and like see what happened. But yeah, nothing wrong with doing that. Then your kids get to go to interesting places.
Cool. Yeah.
One thing I would want to add that both you and I were, or both David and Ashley were just talking about is, when you do photograph family, the other thing that I always thought was kind of a residual effect of it is it allows the subject to learn about you too, and I think as a parent, I don't think my kids ever really learned what I thought was cool until they were, having to participate in photography with me, because typically as a parent, it was more serving them or working things out for them. But suddenly it was kind of like, hey, let's collaborate on something together. And so I always thought it did allow kind of everybody to understand each other a little more,
That's totally true. And I have this thing in parenting that I call letting my kids know that I'm an actual person. Oh, look. And I think it's actually great. I think when I started out parenting, I thought I was just going to be this like super mom, and I was just going to like serve and serve and serve, and that just broke me. And then at some point I needed my kids to know that I was a human being with thoughts and feelings, and I think became a much better parent as a result. And it's funny, like them watching me be a photographer. My daughter sat next to me one time when I did a talk like this during the pandemic, and I think it was weird for her to see me in this kind of role,
Oh, not being a mom for that minute,
a person, and seeing other people relate to me as a person,
Yeah. No, I buy that. There is that idea that you and I talked a little bit about, like I have had friends who are moms, who are kick-ass photographers, who are also moms, and they felt there was an uneasy relationship between the idea that they were trying to be a kick-ass commercial photographer, but they were also a parent who was tied to the needs of their family. And they felt that in the photo industry that there was kind of, this kind of discrimination where if you were a dad who was involved in your kids, either photographically or a single dad, you were thought you were cool. But if you were a mom, it was seen as like a disadvantage or something like that.
Well, but it's like how men get congratulated for hanging out with their kids and women are expected to. It's,
right.
Photography has historically been the purview of older white men.
Yeah.
And if you are not that, I think you're looked at with a different lens. And for me, my only experience in photography has been being a woman and photographing my kids. And that's what I do. And you get a lot of like the word momtographer, like I can't even tell you how the rage that word gives me. And then I come back with Robert Frank photographed his kids. No one called him a dadtographer. I'm not a photojournalist. Like I'm not a commercial photographer. This is what I do. This is my art. And I think my photographs to me are as good as any other subject. If you look down on the subject of intimacy, I think there's something wrong with you. Like, I really think that, and this is kind of my, couldn't we make the world a better place moment? Like if more people shared their everyday life, like the fact that people related to my book that I thought was about my visually impaired son, like people who do not have children with a handicap, like people related to something in those photographs. If everyone showed some piece of themselves, people find things to relate to. And like, couldn't we relate to each other a little better? Like, I would think so. Like, I would like to see the family work of people who do not look like me, who do not live where I live, who have different makeup of their family, like anything. Like I want to see it all because I want to see I'm Jewish, and there's a thing with Jewish people that I've had to stop doing, but like where you go, where are you from? Where's your family from? And because the intention is, and I understand why you can't do that with everyone, but the intention is like, it always ends up with, oh my God, we must be cousins. Like it's wanting to connect. And I think when people see work about family, they want to find the thing that they can relate to. And oh my gosh, this family doesn't look like mine, but I relate to this. The kid is doing this to the mom. I totally get it. Look at the siblings. Like my siblings and I were just like that. And I think a lot of people consider work like photojournalism, documentary work about serious subjects, like more hard hitting, but I think you can have humor in photography. And it still is serious photography. I think you can have personal feelings in photography and intimacy. And I think that is even braver to show than something that has nothing to do with you as a human being.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, well stated.
My TED Talk. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
A couple questions came in here. Trisha, do you want to speak out your question?
Sure. We read a book, and this has stuck in my head because feel like I'm just, I am a new photographer, and I'm learning how to be a photographer better than I have in the past. And my question is, do you feel like you had to fake it till you made it happen? And if so, what do you do?
Did I have to fake it? I had to, I don't know that this is just the way I am. So I felt like I wanted to learn, and I wanted to find the people who would help me learn. But if you're faking it, that puts up a little wall to learning. So I think just be where you are and be open to things and seek out great people like you have right now. And, taking Timothy's class and learn as much as you can. I'm not sure that I ever feel like I make it. The thing that I fake that is not, it's not faking, but the self-talk that I do is like when I was talking about being at that table of intimidating photographers who I've gotten to know and are not intimidating as human beings, but photographers that I felt like they had made it. And I'm sitting at a table with them, and I have to say to myself, and this is, women do this, but like, don't put myself down. Don't say, oh, I just started. Sit there and talk like I have a right to be at this table because I have a right to be at this table, and not diminish anything I do. And it's interesting because having a male business partner, we talk a lot about how differently we relate to people and how we talk to people. And I have really learned to stop doing some things that are, I think, really conditioned in women in the way that we speak, like not to put myself down, not to say, oh, I'm just getting started, not to put my work down. If I'm showing a picture, I don't show a picture unless I can stand by it and say, this is me. So if you're doing that, there's no reason to say, I'm just starting, or, oh, I'm learning, whatever. Like, this is my picture, like it or don't like it. You know what I mean? And stay open and learn. I feel like every day I feel like I'm learning how to take a photograph,
Thank you.
Well stated. Stanley, you had a question. Do you want to verbalize that?
Sure. My question was like, once you had success, did that change you or your photography? I mean, I guess it's kind of a two-layered question. Did success change you as a person and also your photography, or did it not, either one, or
Well, I mean, no one's allowed to look me in the eye anymore, so that's changed. But no, nothing. No, I'm not one of those people. And I don't know that I feel like it's success. I've had 2 books out that I put out. Like you always look, I think within photography, you look at the next step you'd like to get to, and anyone who's there, you're like, oh, they figured it out. And then you get to that step and you're like, oh, no one has it figured out. Like, I know people who have like wished for a gallery show, then you get a gallery show and you're like, that was kind of annoying and a lot of work, like, and kind of expensive. Like, I don't know. So it hasn't changed me. Has it changed my work? I'm really picky about what I put out there, but I think I always have been. And I think in the way it's changed my work for the better is that it's changed my editing, which is that I think I'm more clear. The process of making a book makes you kind of distill down to one core of a subject, but you want your photographs to be kind of not one tone, but one vision, like out of the same person's eyes. And I think I'm more clear on what an Ashley Stohl photograph looks like than I ever was. You know, we all take all kinds of pictures. And if you want to think of it as calculated as branding, which I don't think of it that way, but kind of like, if I'm putting out my photography as, hello, this is my photography, it's gotta all sort of be in the same vein, even if it's not the same subject, like the same pair of eyes taking that picture. You know, I can take some Stephen Shore pictures, but, and you know, I don't know, is that interesting? Is that my work? So I hope that makes sense.
So another kind of follow-up question, do you feel any pressure to put out an Ashley Stohl picture?
No, I love taking pictures. So the pressure that I feel is my own pressure of like, I haven't been shooting, like I need to get out and shoot, but I'm feeling kind of stale or I don't know what I'm doing. Also, the process of making a book is creatively exhausting. Like your creativity gets depleted. And I have a hard time taking pictures at the same time that I'm making a book, even promoting it. It takes so much time and effort and creativity that I feel like at some point you only have so much and it has to go somewhere. So it's really nice after you make a book, let it, or have a show, let yourself simmer for a while. And then you notice you start seeing things again. You start seeing pictures again. So yeah, it's just the creativity suck, you know, that goes away sometimes. And then you've got to find ways to bring it back, which for me is like weird assignments, like 24 palm trees.
Oh, well stated. Let's see, Angie, did you have anything?
I think Angie wanted to know about downtown Santa Monica. And I'm happy to discuss that.
Oh, was that in the chat?
That was a private message. I hope it's okay that I'm saying this out.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
So yeah, this is my weird nostalgia thing, that it's like, I can look at the promenade, which is this sort of open walking mall area in Santa Monica, and it's been there since maybe 1990. And to me, it's still new. It's the new thing. Like if it was there after I went to college, it's called new. And at the same time, I can also tell you that I spent some, you know, like my 21st birthday down there. That was a really long time ago. So the new and the old gets blurred. I think there's a lot of good sort of city planning going on down there, but it's not nostalgic to me. So I'm still in these photographs looking for the things that I'm there and my personal landmarks and the thing, you know, that kind of view where you squint your eyes. You know, when you're in New York City, you squint your eyes and you can kind of see like the clothes hanging from the lines. Like if you block out the McDonald's and the like Dunkin' Donuts, Taco Bell, and then you can kind of see like where my grandparents lived and the clothes hanging from the line and the, you know, you can kind of picture what it used to look like. I'm always squinting to look for that stuff, because I'm a sentimental old fool.
It sounds like that's your next project. It's coming up an awful lot. Usually it's
weird. I'm like semi uncomfortable with having a project that doesn't have people in it.
Ashley, I grew up in that same area.
Did you?
I was, my brother was friends with all the Dogtown skateboarder kids.
Was he?
Yeah.
You know Jesse Martinez?
Yeah.
So he was best friends of my brother-in-law.
Oh, okay.
So I was
talking.
We
grew up on Hill Street, and it was yeah. So it's like We all did the same thing.
Yeah. Did you know, so the one of the guys that's in a lot of my skateboarding pictures is Jamie Quaintance. Did you know his dad? He was one of those kids. But yeah, it's interesting to me that like Jesse Martinez basically supervised the building of the new skate park. Like he keeps a camera on it. He slept in a trailer so no one would steal the supplies. Like he really made that happen and kind of does security on it.
Yeah, so him and my brother are really good friends.
Really? I love that. I love that. You're local.
Yeah.
Small world.
Jamie's known as the enforcer down there. Because I work in skating. They made a movie about him called Made in Venice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good.
What do you do in skating?
I shoot photos with Thrasher.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. You have to send them to me.
I have a link.
Ashley, I also have another question for you.
Yeah.
Other than yourself, who, they always say it takes one person to believe that you can do it. Other than yourself, who was your person that said, just go for it and do it?
And wait. Can I add to Angie?
Yeah.
And then what ever happened with your husband that told you, what are you doing there all day?
My husband.
So answer Angie, but like whatever happened with him.
I was really, the photography started for me. So who said you can do it? It was kind of me. Like it was in spite of my husband. It was in spite of the fact that I had 3 kids and was very busy with them. And I just needed something to do with my brain. The other person that was helpful to me was my friend David Carroll, who you hear is walking in and out of the door. Because I think I valued his opinion, and we look at photography in a similar way, and sort of his encouragement and challenging of me really helped me along the way.
Okay.
And I hope you have someone like that in your life.
My whole class.
I love it. I love it.
Hell yeah. So let's see, I wanted everyone to come up with a question rather than me. Let's just hear. I know sometimes people repeat other people's questions. Mari, Garen, Jeffrey, Bowen, you guys have anything you want to share with the class?
I have a question. I have a bunch of them, but I guess one of the cheesier ones is, what advice would you offer the earlier blooming Ashley Stohl if you could go back in time and prepare your former self for your photography track?
I don't know. I would say stay open and just keep working. I would say look at more photography. I had a time at the beginning when I was kind of resistant to learning about other photographers because I was worried about being too influenced. And I think that is a thing that happens at the beginning. But I also think that's okay. That can be an exercise in graphic design. I've actually had it in a photo class as an exercise. It was a street photography class. And in the morning, she would teach us about sort of a certain genre of street photography, like old French guys. And she'd say, like, in your head, go be one of these guys and take the pictures, and we'll see, we'll come back and see if we can guess who you were emulating. And what that does early on is just getting you taking different kinds of pictures and understanding what sort of pictures there are out there to be taken and playing around with techniques. And I think there was a minute that I was a little resistant because I was like, well, if I look at this person, I'm going to start photographing like them. And at some point, no matter who you look at, you still photograph like yourself once you're through that. But I think it's really helpful to study the history of photography.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, from over to Germany.
Yeah, Mari's in Germany.
So, like some of the other guys mentioned, that I think you've answered most of my questions. already through your discussion. But one of the questions I had was, what is on your, during doing your family, what was on your taboo list of things not to photograph of your children?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, like I said, when they really needed me as a mom, like I'm not here doing, this isn't photojournalism. I'm not doing like hard hitting stories. Like my priority is being a mom. And if I thought taking a picture of something would be sort of psychologically damaging or abandoning of them, that was not okay to me. And then, you know, things about their bodies and there are several pictures of my daughter where I've sort of zoomed in to see, like, is anything inappropriate being exposed here? You know, the one where she's holding her leg up in with the roller skates, like we zoomed in on that a lot to see, like, okay, that's her shorts, right? Like making sure I don't want to put anything out there that at any point she would feel creepy about. And I also asked her permission for some things. So I didn't ever want them to feel kind of victimized by the pictures or the publicity of the pictures. And I didn't want them to feel exposed in a way that I didn't think was okay as their mom to expose them. That was mostly it.
That makes sense.
I would love some crying pictures, but I always put the camera
down. Jeffrey, did you have something?
Just following up on the last question, how did your kids react once the work started getting published in big ways? I know you said your son kind of learned how to sign his name through signing books. So it seemed like he enjoyed it, but how did they react to all these pictures actually getting out there and being seen by a lot of people?
Charlie at age like 5 was pretty sure that he was really famous. So we were driving to school one day. I was like practically in pajamas, unbrushed hair, and got a call from Children's Hospital Los Angeles, who has a big vision center. And they were like, can you come down right now and be on the news about this book? And I looked up to see if there was a dry bar in between me and Children's Hospital. There was not. So we went down there and I'm telling him like, okay, Charlie, you're going to see a lot, because I've been involved with Children's Hospital and the book was actually a fundraiser for Children's Hospital. But I said to him, you know, that you're going to see kids there that look different than you, that might be in a wheelchair, or they might have something that helps them breathe or helps them function in some way. And just know that they're kids. Like I'm giving him the talk because I don't want him to be scared of kids that might seem sick to him or different. And we go in there and we do this interview on the news and we come out and get in the car. And I said, how was that for you, Charlie? And he said, I'm pretty sure they were all looking at me. So like never underestimate the narcissism of a child. They liked it. I think while I was taking it, the pictures, sometimes it was annoying. And I remember so my daughter came to the opening in Manhattan, and later that summer, we were all together in the city. And I brought all 3 of them on a quiet day when no one was there, and they got to walk around and see themselves on the wall. And it was like, they liked it. Like they liked it in a different way than they had before. So that was really great to see. But yeah, I remember Sarah saying, okay, the next book is going to be about me. And Charlie goes, it's my book.
Oh, that's interesting. Hey, Alana and Bowen, do you have any last questions before we let our guests go?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Actually, you have answered many of my questions in the round. But one of my questions is that how has photographing your family and children helped or affected the relationship between you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like I said, sometimes it made me feel more present with what they're doing. And sometimes it was annoying to them. I can tell you that a lot of Darth Vader was like bought and paid for. There's an era when Charlie would do anything for a like brand new $1 bill. So I would go to the bank and get some, and like literally, he'd be like, oh, I don't want to do it. And I'd be like, look what I got. And he'd do it. That's sort of how we got through the end of it, where he was getting old enough that like he was starting to really not want to do it. Sometimes they didn't want to deal with the camera. Sometimes they didn't want to stop and stand still for a second. And then a lot of times they loved seeing the result, and they loved seeing themselves on a gallery wall and in a book. And they loved, I remember my childhood through the pictures, and I think they have a lot of memories through the pictures. So in some ways it brought us close, and in some ways I'm super irritating. It's a mixed bag. Having a photographer as a mother.
For sure. And Alana.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. It's been really great. I really enjoy your work. I know you talked a little bit about like what you're focusing on now that you're kind of transitioning away from photographing your family as much, but I'm just curious if you ever kind of see yourself revisiting that topic in the future. Because I know there are some photographers who kind of have these like, people in their lives through many, many years, like decades and decades. I'm just interested if that's something that you...
I think that's never going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is access. My daughter goes to college in upstate New York. Like when she's home, I'll certainly take her picture, but it's not with the same intensity that I was when it was like a project that I was doing for a book. Now it gets to be just kind of like when I want to, when something's interesting. There's just a different sort of engine behind it that's a little mellower. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever stop taking their pictures, which is fun. I just don't know that it'll be another book. Who knows? Maybe it will.
Right.
But like if you look at that, if you look at that Lee Friedlander book, all those pictures over all those years, I would guess that there were a couple months where he didn't take a picture, or there are gaps in there too. So who knows? Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think when Charlie's in his 20s, you should convince him to put the helmet back on.
There's totally like an age when, like, if you're still putting the helmet on like your 12-year-old, like that makes us all uncomfortable. Like that would be more about my issues than like liking of science fiction. But yeah, he might have to have a like, moving into the college dorm, Darth Vader. We'll see what we can get him to do. Although he's way more into Star Trek now. Like we're like really into Star Trek.
Hey, Ashley, we really will let you go. We have one last question here from Grace Norsini, who has a very curious question. Grace, do you, and then we will let you go. You've been very generous with your time. Words of wisdom all around. Grace, would you like to have your question?
Yeah, it was kind of like what Chen was saying a little while ago, saying, would you ever reenact or would your kids ever reenact the childhood photos that you took in the series?
It might be kind of funny. I've never asked them to. It might be kind of funny to do, but the main thing is that I could see myself continuing to take the same kind of photos. Like I showed you guys the like string of like 3 kids, 3 kids, 3 kids, 3 kids. And I could see taking those like, forever. And it would be fun to see the continuation and the change.
Oh yeah.
Them. But reenacting one is an interesting idea. We might have to try that when everyone's home.
I have one more question. What are your future projects?
Like I was saying, I'm kind of figuring that out now. I think it's Los Angeles. I want to figure out kind of ways to photograph the people around me that are close to me that are not my children. And so it's really nice to be in a place where I'm not working towards a book. I'm not even working on a particular project. I'm just sort of figuring out what's interesting and what I feel like shooting right now and trying new things. That's, like the learning process can never end.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, this was a blast. Thank you. Your work
Thank
is
you.
more fascinating now than it was before. It was great to hear you talk about it. No, this was wonderful, and I hope you enjoyed this experience as well.
Thank you all so much. Great questions. So nice to talk to all of you. Thank you for having me.